Hey everyone, Xavier here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over the more of my movie collection with the 4Ks, going from C to D in this video. As I said in my previous video, I'm only doing like maybe 2 letters per 4K because I have a lot more 4Ks than Blu-rays, and I don't want to try to make my videos over an hour long trying to go over every single one. If there's more letters. So without further ado, let's get on. Let's get on with the collection. First off, for today we have Candyman, the original. Not much to say. If you know the original Candyman, Tony Todd, it is a fantastic horror movie that has a lot of layers with the themes and the allegories. This is the only one. There is the remake, or not a remake. It's like a reboot, like legacy sequel type of deal. That was produced by Jordan Peele. I did watch that. I wasn't a big fan of how they continued the ending from the first film in terms of let's just completely ignore the fact of what the whole movie was trying to do and just ignore it. And I hated that. I didn't really like it, even though it was well directed and had some cool kills and everything. But not much to say. Great looking 4K, and it's a classic of the genre. Oh yeah, actually, I forgot to do the usual, open everything. There is also an unrated cut of the movie with this copy, but the unrated cut is not exactly that much different from the theatrical. It's just a few seconds of extended kill and a bit of you see a little bit of nudity from the main actors, but that's about it. Up next is Casino. This is a Martin Scorsese film that I think it was followed up. But yeah, it followed up Goodfellas, and this movie is kind of like Goodfellas, but not as good. I just watched it last night actually when I was last night as in when I'm recording this video. It's not a bad movie. It's just a very awkwardly disjointed one. It's like you think best way to describe this is. Imagine watching Goodfellas, but Goodfellas doesn't start off at the beginning of when the main character is getting into the crime world. It just starts in the middle of it, and it's all about this guy who runs this casino that he's working with the mob to steal the money from. But the movie already starts him already having the casino, so it's kind of weird. It's like a weird you start in the middle of the story, and they just extend everything in the middle of that storyline, and it's not a terrible idea. It's just that a lot of scenes feel like they don't go anywhere. There's a lot of exposition and a lot of characters of like who's this, who's that, and it's like it feels like they should have had a bit more to explain everything prior to the start of the movie. And also, it's not. I don't think the character. And I get it. That these are mobsters and everything. The characters aren't meant to be, lovable. But I also think that that they're like not even as likable compared to like Goodfellas had a good blend of these are mobsters, but you can see where they're coming from, and they can do a lot of bad stuff, but they have a bit of value. Here it's like there's like the ending is a very despicable ending. Like it's I don't say it. It's not for me. It's not a happy ending. But then again, a lot of mobster movies are not happy endings. But I also feel like who am I supposed to root for? I'm not in a good way. Like it just feels like you know, you're just watching a bunch of, criminals just get away with stuff and doing things that doesn't really make sense. Regardless, Casino, well-directed movie, well-acted movie. It's Martin Scorsese, so it's a higher quality film than most. It's one of his weaker films. Up next is Captain Underpants, the first and only epic movie. This was one of the I don't know how to say this. The DreamWorks was going through restructuring. During the mid 2010s, they were being acquired by Universal, and this was I think the last movie that DreamWorks distributed that wasn't from Universal. It was by Fox, and it's one of their better films. Like it's unique because it's a very low budget, modestly budget for for the animation, and it was very much like a sleeper hit. It's weird because they prioritized Boss Baby, which made sense. It had a bigger budget, and they wanted to make sure they get money from that. And they put this on the same day as Wonder Woman when that movie came out, it still made money. It's still considered a hit, but it also is much more slept upon. Even though this is a pretty good movie, like if you know Captain Underpants, you know the books that is, you know how good like this I mean yeah, obviously it's irrelevant and the humor supposed to be juvenile, but the movie is also really good. You got like, some very very interesting cast choices. The humor is spot on. The animation's great. Um, Obviously it's very much like it's a perfect adaptation of the books, which the books themselves are yes juvenile kitty, but it's really fun even as an adult. It's like there's some really clever stuff in here. So I would recommend to try to check this out. I'll also say when it comes to animation on 4K, 3D animation tends to look great. When they try to make it 4K, clean up the animation and the details a bit. I'll get more into like 2D, when we get to that. Up next is Chappie, which is the I was gonna say Neil Blomkamp's last film, but he did two more movies after this. But this was the one that really sank his career for a while because it flopped. I'll say though this is actually a pretty good movie. I think I prefer it more than was it Elysium with Matt Damon. I understand why it got a lot of mixed reviews at the time. If you don't know the movie, it's about this Chappie, this robot who gets reprogrammed as a gangster in South Africa, and he's working with these annoying, unlikable characters. And you have the inventor, who's Dave Patel, trying to, get to possession back as if he's like a child. And you have Hugh Jackman, who's the sort of like a villain trying to ruin the whole Chappie project and everything. It is like it goes all over the place, but the direction, the effects, the action, the most of the acting is good. Like, and the music by Hans Zimmer is like very underrated. One of his underrated scores. I love it, and it is a bit disjointed in areas, but I think is a pretty solid sci-fi movie. The only but the main issue that really holds it back though was just the gangster characters that are played by these rappers from South Africa, and they're playing themselves, and it's just a weird dynamic. But regardless, it's worth checking out. Up next is Child's Play. Not much to say. This is a classic horror movie. The first Child's Play, oh my god, I remember watching this. I love it. Also, I almost fell out. But if you know this movie, there's not much to say about Chucky and the original Child's Play. It is a classic. I know some people might think it's dated in areas, but I don't care. It's a great. It is a classic of the genre, and Brad Dourif's Chucky is iconic. Great 4K as well. Next up is Child's Play 2, which is the only other sequel I have from the franchise. I know that all the movies have came out in 4K, but I only really like the first two. And the sequel is, I think, it's just as good. I wouldn't say it would be better than the first one, but it's like just under. Like it's a great sequel. Like in terms of they up the violence. They try to do something different rather than the same thing. They have the same character, like the main protagonist, but they have to have new characters. They can't just have the mom and the cop again, and they have to be like Chucky is now more defined as a character now, being more comedic and dark. But it's a great movie. I don't want to get into too much because there's not much I will say that's different of my opinion compared to others. Up next is the 2015 Cinderella film. I don't really like the remakes much, but this is probably the only remake that I like that Disney has put out. And if you know, they made the prince more of a character. They did the cast is great. You have great direction by Kenneth Branagh. They did some nice changes. Not everything is and the third act can be a bit weak in areas with the Cinderella, but other than that, it is a pretty good this is how the live action remakes should have been. And I wouldn't have got it if it wasn't $10. This cost me $10. Remember, I got a lot of these 4Ks when they were in that bargain store for $10, $20, way cheaper than they should have been, with the digital codes as well packed in, which is fantastic. So yeah, this is a pretty solid Disney live action remake, and that's the only one I think I have, because that's the only one that's worth collecting in my opinion. Up next is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in this weird like special edition, it's the 40th anniversary edition. So it has, I think, all the cuts. Um, I'm pretty sure, I think, yeah, all the cuts. Like there's I think like the directors and the old, and like the complete and the original. I think I only watch I think it's like the final cut. As for what I think about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I'm not the biggest fan of it. To follow up Jaws is commendable, but I think the problem is that I love the first two acts of the film, which is more thriller and suspense of what the heck is up with the aliens. Then the third act is just kind of dumb, like, oh, so you play some music and the aliens are friendly, but it's like, is it a hostage situation? They had humans in with them, and now the humans are going inside the UFO. The main character, well, I mean, there's multiple characters, but the father, he just leaves his family. That's kind of depressing. I don't know what the heck the ending is trying to say. I think it would have been more interesting if it's like the aliens had humans to trade, and the government had a few aliens from like Roswell, and it was like a hostage situation. Like it was like they're like, oh, that, and that would have been more interesting. But it's just weird that the aliens just abduct a bunch of people and they just give them back for some reason. I don't know. But the first two acts are still good. Like it's still like really cool to watch in terms of like the how how it's directed and acted. But I didn't like the ending. Up next is Coco. Not much to say. It's a fantastic Pixar movie. It's probably my favorite Pixar movie, in fact. I don't know what. Also, there's a digital code here that I don't need since I already have it. Great 4K of the movie. It's almost perfect. Like the only issue I would say is maybe the dog is a bit annoying. Like it's a bit juvenile. But considering how dark the movie is, it makes sense. I forgot to grab water for this session, but that is my bad. So if I start coughing, you'll know why. Up next is Creed. Not much to say. Creed 1 is a pretty good movie. I would say the only issue is that the rival is a bit bit bland. Like his the final opponent for him is like not really memorable. But I don't think you care. I don't think it's about the final opponent. It's more about the journey of Adonis and Rocky, and like just everything up to like the final fight is really fantastic, and you can understand why Disney got Ryan Coogler to make the Black Panther films after this, because this was a fantastic revival of the Rocky franchise. Would the rival have been more interesting? Sure, but at that point, like that's the only thing that they needed to do, but it makes sense. Right. Next up, we have Creed 2. I would say this is probably better than the first. It's weird. Like I think like the first Creed is a bit more well directed and edited everything, but Creed 2 is really good with the villains, like the rivals with the Dragos. That's great. It's there's some good emotion. There's some nice fun moments. Yeah, it's just a solid sequel. It's like there's not much to really say much about Creed 2. A lot of people love Creed 2. As for Creed 3, I still don't have it on 4K yet. I would say it's good. I think it's the weakest of that trilogy so far. Like, yes, Jonathan Majors is good. Like, it's the direction's interesting, but it's also like, no Rocky is a bit annoying. Like, this bit disappointing, and it does feel like something's missing in that movie. Up next is Creepshow. If you don't know what this was written by Stephen King and directed by George Romero, and it is a great horror anthology movie. The first two stories I would say are a bit on the whatever side, but the last three stories are fantastic. The final one with the cockroaches. The thing is, little fun fact: I had a roach problem in the past in this place. I don't see any roaches now, but which thank God, because honestly, the final story with the roaches is pretty intense. But this is just a well-made like horror film, and like it's also really well directed. It's a shame that George Romero didn't really do much projects outside of his zombie films, because this shows that he's not a one trick, one franchise only dude. He can do he directed really really good stuff. And Stephen King's stories are really fun, not the first two or whatever, but like the other ones are really interesting, and they had some interesting directions with the how they go. But yeah, if you know Creepshow, you know it. But if you don't know it, watch it. It is definitely worth your time. Next up is the Croods, the DreamWorks movie that I think for a while kind of fell into obscurity. It did well when it came out, but it kind of did not make an impact for a while until the memes with Nicolas Cage and Grug and everything like that. And when it comes to me, I think the movie's pretty solid. It's not one of DreamWorks better films. I think the issue is that it's a bit generic. I think if you know the story of the Croods and trying to find a new home, and you have this guy, he's trying to get the trying to be a love interest for the daughter, and the father's not happy about that. It's generic. I also think the animation is a weird blend. From what I've heard, they did motion capture, so it's trying to be this real. They have so the characters are a bit more realistic, but the movie's also trying to be more slapstick, so it doesn't really jive the best. The character movements, if you watch the movie, you can understand how it feels weird. They're so realistic, but the world and the humor doesn't match with the character movements. But I will say it's still a solid movie. Like it's still fun to watch. It's like I think DreamWorks is definitely they have their hits and misses, but this was I think a solid double. Like if you were playing baseball, it's like a double second base. That's what I mean. Now what's funny is it's a bit damaged. God damn. Like I think I got squashed a bit. Is the Croods A New Age? This is surprisingly even better than the first one. They changed up the animation so it's more cartoony instead of more realistic. And if you can't tell, this is a bit torn. That is unfortunate. But the animation got changed. The story goes in a bit more of a unique direction, and they upped the humor a lot more. And this is one of the funniest DreamWorks films, up there with Captain. I think even more than Captain Underpants. It's rare for family films to have consistent laughs, but this one made me laugh a lot, and I really enjoy it. It's a shame that this slip cover is getting torn apart, but whatever. It's a slip cover. Slip cover is a slip cover. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, check out the Croods too. It's well done, and it's directed by the same guy who would do Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which goes to show that Joel Crawford, who's the director, he's talented. He's definitely knows what to do for sequels to long abandoned troubling films, because this film was announced when the first film came out, but it was stalled in the development process, and when it finally came out during the pandemic, it managed to exceed everyone's expectations. Up next is the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower. The Dark Crystal. The Dark Tower comes after. Dark Crystal. I remember I watched it I only watched it once when I got this 4K, and I remember as a kid I remember seeing the marketing and everything like that. But watching it now, it's okay. It's not amazing in my opinion. I think when it came out, I bet it would have been shocking to see the how well done the puppetry and how unique the story was. But in in today's yes, the puppetry is great, and the world building is cool, but I do think the characters are a bit on the bland side. That it's not super it's not as exciting I think as it is compared to how it would have been. Regardless though, it's still very good 4K. I mean, it's Jim Henson's company. It's gonna be great looking no matter what. And even though I may not have been a huge fan, a lot of people are. And they had that Netflix series that they canceled way too early. So yeah, it's a shame, but that's just Netflix for you. Coming up is actually The Dark Tower. This is an infamous movie. If you don't know, this came out I think a month before the 2017 It. This movie did not hit with audiences. I don't know if like I think the trailers were great, but I think the problem is that the critical backlash was huge. If you don't know, The Dark Tower is like a big series from Stephen King, and the movie made this weird. From what I've heard, because I never read the books, from what I've heard, the whole thing of the movie is that it's sort of trying to adapt. It's like it's trying to be a sequel to the books, but trying to copy the first book in a way. It's like because if you don't know and this is a bit of a spoiler for the books, not the movie. It's revealed that the storyline is in a constant loop. It's basically like things are happening, but the main character is not aware that he's in a loop, and he must break that loop, like that cycle of time. So the Dark Tower is basically like an adventure that is still quote unquote in the books, but is also doing its own thing. Um, and I think a lot of fans who read the books hated it. Now, for someone like me who has not read the books and just sees it as this, okay, standalone movie, it it's kind of decent. I think Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey are great as the gunslinger and the Man in Black. The kid actor they got was great. I think the direction is pretty solid. They did they did some cool choice, not the cool choices, like they killed the mom of the boy, which I thought, oh, it's gonna be generic. They're gonna capture the mom, and the kid has to go save the mom, but they just kill her, which is like shocking. Um, and I love the scene when the gunslingers in New York. But I can understand where even if you're a casual moviegoer, this cannot be the best film. The third act is kind of rushed. Things are just happening. It ends in a way that is trying to like set up a sequel, but not really because the story is done. From what I've heard, they were trying to do a trilogy of this, and even an Amazon show with the same actors, and they were gonna get more into the books and everything. But unfortunately, the film just didn't do very well. It had a lot of hate from fans and even from people that are not like me, but casual moviegoers. They thought it was generic, not very interesting. But I thought it's still a solid film. I think it's a shame that they never really got a chance to, how would you say, develop those other movies or shows, because I think they could have done better, because I think they had a solid foundation with this movie. But alas, from what I've heard, they are trying to do a reboot for like as a show. Next up, we have Death on the Nile. I do not have Murder on the Orient Express. I'm not a fan of that movie, particularly the ending. Like, I think it's still a well-directed film, and the acting's great. But the ending, I hated the ending. I don't want to even spoil it. Like, if you want to see it, go ahead. But I did not like the outcome. This, however, I really like, because this is, I would say the first act of the movie is not that good. It's too slow, and there's a lot of dry humping in the movie. there's a lot of sexual, tension in the movie in the first act, and it was just kind of cringe. But as soon as the actual death on the Nile, the murder happens, that's when it picks up, and it's a ongoing murder. People are getting killed, and you have to figure out who's the culprit. And it's like I actually really like this. I think this is my favorite of the Hercule Poirot movies. I think I butchered the last name of the guy. Also, a little fun thing is that when you watch the first movie, The Murder on the Orient Express, and the movie ends on the stinger for he's going to Egypt for Death on the Nile. This movie picks up on the idea that whole tease at the end of the first movie is a completely different mystery that we have not seen. I just find that hilarious. But in general, I think this is a pretty good movie. The first act, yeah, it has its issues, but after that, it's a really good mystery. And that's what I think about the what's it called, Haunting in Venice. I think it's just as good as than Death on the Nile, but I think I prefer Death on the Nile on more just because of the I prefer the mystery there compared to the mystery in Venice, as well as the cast. All right, next up is The Deer Hunter. This is a notorious Best Picture winner. Not because it's a bad movie, but because the director, he made this one very good movie, and then the next movie he did, his career tanked. And some people say that even this movie is not that good. The main issue with this movie is that it is like a 3-hour movie. It is 183 minutes, which is Yeah, like free. Yeah, it's a free hour. It's 3 hours long, and the problem is that the first act is not exactly very eventful. It's just a wedding. It's just a setup for a wedding to establish the characters before they even go to Vietnam. If you don't know, it's just a Vietnam movie, and I mean, it's not really about the war a lot. Like, yeah, the second act is in Vietnam, but it's more of the effects of what the war has did to the soldiers, which is interesting. The problem is that the first act is very long, and it just sets up the characters, and you get it, but it takes forever. Then the second act is Vietnam, and then the third act is the PTSD effects. And I think it's great, and it's well directed and it's well acted. You got some very notable actors, if you can tell: Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, Meryl Streep. But it is just a notoriously controversial film for just the length and the director's career after this, and yeah. But I still think it's a pretty solid movie. It's also very good looking 4K, I will add. All right, next up is Detective Pikachu. I think, aside from Silent Hill, this is my second favorite video game adaptation movie. It does have the issue of the third act being a bit weird with the Mewtwo thing and the villain's plan. Hey, let's turn everyone into Pokemon. Okay, that's not a good plan. What if you turn into the fish or the cocoon Pokemon, like Metapod? That doesn't make sense. But other than that, it's well directed. You can tell they put a lot of budget into this movie compared to something like Sonic the Hedgehog, where they skimped on the budget. Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu is a bit hit and miss. It means Ryan Reynolds. He's going to be a polarizing actor. Some people love him, some people hate him. I think he works fine in this movie. The what's his name? Justice Smith as the male lead. He's also pretty solid. Effects are good. You got some nice music. The action's fun. Is the mystery predictable? Oh, absolutely. I don't think, though, you come to watch this movie for the mystery as much as it's a detective movie. You watch it because it's Pokemon in the world. And what I love about this movie compared to a lot of the video game adaptations is that, yes, it is for the fans, but it's also very casual in the fact that they're not going to over-explain everything to the casual moviegoer who has no idea what the heck a Pokemon is. They just kind of skimp on the details and just let them come to their own conclusion, which is good in my opinion. Up next is Die Hard. Not much to say, other than it's a bit disappointing that only the first Die Hard got into 4K. It's a very fantastic, transfer to 4K, I will add, but I would love to see the second or third, like the other movies, except for the third movie, to get on 4K. And I don't know if Disney will even get to that point. But hey, we got the first film, and I think you can say that's good enough. If only one Die Hard has to be on 4K, it has to be the first one. So yeah, not much to say about that. Doctor Sleep. This has the director's cut, but not on 4K. This is the annoying thing. Director's cut is great, but it's only on the Blu-ray. The theatrical cut is definitely still a good movie, but some stuff from the director's cut I do prefer more than the original. And as for what I think about the film, I think it's great. I will say though, and I do have The Shining in my collection. Is this kind of weird that The Shining was trying to be more ambiguous of whether or not there's ghosts or Jack Torrance was going crazy, but then this movie's like, oh yeah, no, there's ghosts. It's weird because they're trying to recorrect themselves to be more like the book, but it's also that's why I prefer the director's cut, because they make the implication that it was, the ghosts manipulating Jack Torrance instead of Jack Torrance just being crazy. Regardless, this is a well done movie, well acted, well shot, well composed. This is a fantastic movie. If you have not seen Doctor Sleep, you gotta check it out. And finally, for this video, we have Do the Right Thing. I don't really have much to say about this movie. This is fantastic. It really should have got more recognition from the Oscars during when it came out. The acting, it's just the vibe of the movie. This is I think the definitive Spike Lee film, because it's so vibey. It's so not coming of age, but very chill for for the majority of the movie. There's not much story. It's just these characters on a very hot day in New York, and there's not like, you're just vibing with these characters and you're understanding their personalities and their goals and everything. And then the final act completely flips the script in terms of what the movie's trying to say, and it's fantastic. I love it. It's a fantastic looking 4K to boot, and I would say that Spike Lee is very much a great director. But I think this is his best film to date, even though there are other films I think are almost as good as that. And that's about it for this video. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time when we get more into the collection. Like I'm enjoying doing these videos. It's gonna be sad when I have to finish the whole series, but other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice day.